Welcome to the Two Wealth Show, a show that shares how you can create real wealth for you and your family. I'm one of your hosts, Justin Bogard, and my co-host is Elizabeth Sickles, aka Super E. I am a real estate note investor, specializing in performing residential real estate debt. I find the deals, acquire them for my own portfolio, as well as educate investors while walking them through the process of owning a real estate note. My co-host Super E, a real estate investor, specializing in short-term rentals and the management of them. She connects investors with short-term tenants and manages everything in between. Our show is sponsored by PATHNOTES and Elizabeth MAORA. You can find out more information by visiting our websites at brightpathnotes.com and elizabethmaora.com. Super E, how are you?
I am doing great. Just out spending money.
Spending money? Not my money, right?
No, it is not taxpayer money.
Okay. I was going to say, what are you getting into now?
We have 5 houses we're furnishing right now. So
You are?
a lot of shopping. It's a great thing.
I should have hired you when we were remodeling our house last summer just to furnish it for us. That would be
We make
good.
it very easy.
Very easy and very affordable, right?
That's right. Yes.
Well,
And how are you today?
I am doing very well. I am excited again because I have another fun interview today that we're going to do. And it's one of my friends that I've learned to get to know in the note business. His name is Chris Seveney. And this is episode 10, by the way. And those of you that are listening to this podcast, we do film this as well. It's on our video channels, Bright Path Notes YouTube channel or Elizabeth MAORA's YouTube channel as well. So you can see Chris and his cool little setup. I don't do a lot of good intros for our guests and stuff. I just get too excited to bring him on. So I'm going to bring on Chris right now. Hey, Chris, how's it going?
Good. How are you doing, Justin? Elizabeth, how are you?
Doing good, my friend. Thanks for taking the time to, get on our podcast today and get to talk about you today, Chris.
I don't have much to say about me, but I'll come up with some stuff. I before I hop in, though, I just like to mention, Elizabeth, if you really want a challenge about furnishing some properties, as we take back REOs as a lender in the note space, we got lots of properties that could be a challenge for you to try and furnish these properties.
Right.
Absolutely.
You'll be going all over the country too.
I'd be happy to. We're actually expanding, so it's a good thing.
It's a lot of things people leave in these properties, which we could talk about a little bit on the show. But again, thank you both for having me on today. It's a pleasure and glad to be here.
Chris, one of the interesting things that stands out when I think about Chris Seveney is your last name, Seveney. And I actually didn't know how to pronounce that at first when I first had heard about you, being in the note business and you hear about certain note investors and doing certain things. I'm like, how would you say that name? And then I saw the entity that you have is Seveney Investments. And I was like, oh, that's how you say it. Seveney is. That's a great play on how you made a company out of your last name. So
yeah. And it's interesting because that's how easy way to explain it. I still have a lot of people butcher it, believe it or not. But when people ask like how you pronounce it, I'm like, or I'll get a call like 3 weeks later from somebody or a text and be like, I get the name of your company now, just randomly out of blue. And, it adds a little chuckle to it.
Yeah. So that's, if you guys want to look up Chris, one of his websites is the number 7, the letter E, investments.com, 7einvestments.com. So Chris, I know that you have a full-time job right now, and I know that you run a note business as well, like I do. Mm-hmm. Chris, I don't know how I would have time for a W-2 job. So I want to know, what do you do besides run a note business?
So I work in commercial real estate for a developer. I oversee all their construction development in the Washington, D.C. area. So it's a company that family-owned company run by 3 brothers. They own a multitude of office, retail, multifamily properties. So recently, a few years ago, we built a 284-unit brand new apartment building. Since that time, I've been doing a lot of renovations on buildings, upkeep. They're very big in sustainability. So a lot of solar projects. I'm putting together 2 projects right now. That's about 1 megawatt of solar, which, on a typical house here, like I think 10 kilowatts. So we'll take that by, what, 1,000 or 100,000, whatever. So big projects from that perspective. So yeah, that's what I do. And, the balance it and manage it, it's all about organization. Like, right now, basically, I usually take my lunch breaks and try and eat quick and network with people like we are right now.
So we're eating into your lunchtime. That's how much you sacrifice to be on this show. I love it.
I had lunch a little early this morning, so I'm good.
Elizabeth, the other thing I like about Chris is Chris and I talked last week, or it was 2 weeks ago, but we're doing some collaboration on some other things. And it was getting close to the end of our meeting. I was getting ready to run late. And I said, I know you probably got to get off here. And he's like, yeah, I promised my son that I would have lunch with him today. And I said, that guy is an awesome guy, awesome dad. So to know how busy you are and to say, nope, I'm stopping work. I promised my kid something. I'm going to go do that.
Yep. Today, 5:30, we've got basketball and then going for a walk. So, it's like anything. You plan it, you set the expectation for the day, and you just work towards it. So that's, with anything in life, that's what I found is if you schedule it, you'll stick to it. Whether you're going to the gym, which a lot of people have, I struggle with, if I put it on a schedule, then it's like, oh, it pops up. You're almost like forced to do it. Whereas if it's not on a schedule, it makes it a lot more challenging.
I could imagine writing out a planner by hand nowadays when I can use my, Outlook calendar or whatever I have for my calendar. I would, my handwriting's poor enough as it is. Elizabeth probably already knows that. So everything I have to have on that calendar. But you're right, Chris. I'm the same way. Like if my wife doesn't put something on the calendar, I'm just like, I didn't hear you say that. It's not on the calendar. That's my excuse.
Yeah, that's why I tell everybody, if it's not my calendar, it doesn't exist. So.
Yeah,
that's right. And Chris, can you talk about, we'll get into the notes in just a second. Can you talk about where you guys see commercial going, especially, everything that's happened that's starting last year?
Commercials, in interesting times right now, especially, in the Washington, D.C. area. I can talk specifically in nationwide as well. The office market's struggling. I think right now only about 20% of office workers are actually back in the office right now in the Washington, D.C. area. So what you are seeing is a lot of tenants who have leases that are expiring. A lot of them are looking to somewhat downsize a little bit because they're realizing that there's more flexibility in the telecommuting space to allow them to do that from that perspective. And I don't think, we're going to have any type of major crash because of the availability of money that's out there from that perspective. In reality, the office markets aren't struggling as much as people would anticipate. Certain areas, the restaurant and that type of food service, is, struggling a little bit. But what we're now seeing a lot on the commercial side is as businesses actually are starting to open up, where they're struggling is finding people to hire, actually, from that perspective. So there's still a good availability of jobs. And there's also going to be, once, things really start to open up more, there's so much pent up demand for people just to go out and like get out of the house, and whether it's eat, shop, whatever it is, there's a lot of that as well. At the end of the day, though, I mean, it's very difficult to predict what is going to happen. There's so many outside influences on micro and macroeconomic issues. Certain areas, I'm sure, just like a decade ago, won't be hit as hard as other areas of the country. I'm sure we will see areas get hit hard or harder than others. Do I still think we'll continue to see this boom that we've had in a lot of just all markets over the last several years? I don't think so. I think eventually that's going to slow down a little bit. But again, it's really tough to predict from that perspective. The one thing I will mention, though, that we are seeing, and this is kind of what plays into this a little bit, is new construction on commercial, multifamily is almost at a in our market is almost at a standstill because of the pricing of products. Steel is up about 40%. Lumber, as many people know, is up several $100%. Glass and aluminum are very expensive right now. It's not really feasible to underwrite a project right now that you can actually, go to a lender and say, hey, lend on this, because the numbers don't work. And what that's causing is, the lack of building. There's, again, we're already at a housing shortage, so it just keeps that competition. So it's that difficult balance that we're featuring right now of, the high prices and the low availability, how is that going to pan out? And it's like I said, going to be interesting to see how it does pan out next few years.
Wish I had a crystal ball.
I think we all wish we had one starting about probably, 20, 25 years ago, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure about you, Chris, but some of the mentors I have in the real estate and the note business, they've never seen really a time like this. And it's just kind of interesting how when you're in the real estate world, how unique every cycle is in real estate. And we may never see something like this or experiencing something like this that we've had in the last year and a half with real estate and a pandemic that's come across. So,
yeah, I mean, the note space is very similar to other aspects. It's a lot of things nobody's seen, and it really comes to, you have to adjust. You can't just, have one, focus area or business plan and think that's how things are going to go. It's like anything in life. It's going to go off course, and you just got to be prepared and know how to manage it and, work your way through it.
You definitely can't be a one-trick pony.
No, that is for sure. Unless you got a lot of money, then yes, you can be a one-trick pony. If you want to have a lot of funds that can be conservative with.
Are you seeing any new builds? I mean, despite all the economic impact from everything, but are there new builds going on right now in the DC area?
Besides Amazon HQ, which is actually, something coming onto the area, no, we're not seeing a lot. And I deal a lot with architects. Okay. So they're usually the people want to talk to about what's going on with the economy. And it's a little, tidbit I'll give people, because you got to remember, architects have to, got to go through 4 sets. They got to go through design development, construction drawings, and everything. They got to get through all that before it gets permitted. And they'll spend 8 to 12 months doing those drawings. So if the architects are slow with putting drawings together, if they're not already shovel ready, that's a signal as well. And talking with a lot of architects and other contractors who I, again, talk with on a daily basis, they're seeing a lot of discussions with developers back and forth on, viability, feasibility, or get pricing, some, estimates on some projects and stuff. But when I talk to them, most of them are just saying, great, thanks, we got the estimate and we're just going to put it on the shelves for the time being. I think absolutely until the dust settles with COVID and things start really opening up more. But even at that point in time, I still think you're going to see dust collecting on plans that are out there because of the significant impact on the price, the material pricing increase, and the lack of labor, which also increases labor rates.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Chris, how did you get into the commercial real estate space? And by the way, I'm not sure if you were in the note space before then or after you got into commercial real estate, but can you expand upon that?
Yeah. So I got into commercial real estate. So I went to college for a civil engineering degree, graduated in the mid-90s. Then out of college, started working for a large general contractor up in the Northeast, up in Boston, where I grew up in Massachusetts. So I did that for 10 years. And again, I was overseeing office, retail, residential, really depends on the time frame of things. And then in 2008, perfect timing, I guess, I moved down to Washington, D.C., because at the time, the joke was Washington, D.C. was the proverbial only gas station open in construction because nobody was building. So our company had an office down here. I came down to assist a lot on the operational side of systems and getting people to follow a lot of these standing operating procedures. So did that for 5 years. After I did that, I went to go work for a local residential developer that did large scale townhouses and multifamily. So I oversaw a project that was 60 high-end condos for them that were started around, million plus up to 5 million. And that's when the person I was working for at that time, he was very entrepreneurial as well as the whole company. So he had rentals, out in San Diego and everywhere. And he's like, you got to get your own portfolio. You're never going to be able to retire on this. So my wife and I, we built our single family residence. We acted as general contractors. So we had great equity, took some equity out, went and bought 2 rentals. And then with the kids and everything, it was impossible to scale, especially in Washington, D.C. area. It means you'd have to buy off market. You get a call right now on your phone. If you're not at that property in 2 hours, get under agreement somebody else already has. So physically pretty much impossible to scale. And then on bigger pockets, I just stumbled upon note investing. I was like, oh, what's this? And this was in 2016. And then I spent about 6 months researching note investing, pulled the trigger towards the latter part of 2016, bought a few notes in 2017. And then kind of in 2018 is when, I have the proverbial explosion of buying, 50 plus notes a year. And now I'm probably on average buying 150 notes a year right now.
Wow. That's a lot of notes, especially when you're not doing it full time.
It's the one thing I'll mention about that, because people do ask, and you asked that earlier, systems. I've spent, tens of thousands of dollars on software systems, and it's the same system servicers use. And the way I look at it is I could go hire somebody for 50 grand a year, or I could go spend, I've probably spent, 30, 40 plus thousand on software that really replaces that person. And it's, a one-time cost with some monthly maintenance on it, but it's a lot cheaper than having a full-time person. But also in the same token, if you have somebody and they leave, then you have to go through, train everyone again and so forth. So, the way, again, I take little bites at it. I have it set up where I go through about 20 notes a day. First thing in the morning, I'll spend an hour, go through those 20 notes, and, it's 100 notes a week. Then on to the next one. The next batch. So when you break things down into smaller sizes, it's easy to manage. And most people don't understand too with notes. If they're paying, there's not much you have to do. You check it. Did they pay? Great. If they didn't, you still have to wait anyways till they get behind. So it's not like you're spending hours on end trying to manage yourself out of a situation.
Right. It's not as easy as Chris put it, but yeah, and dumbing it down, that's basically what it is.
Trust me, it's not easy. And the people who do sell it as being easy or passive, it's not. But I also see people sometimes take it to the other level of they make too much work for themselves. Mm-hmm. Like, they'll go chase a borrower down and spend all this time and effort trying to find somebody, whether even if you're trying to Google them on Facebook, LinkedIn, or all these places. For me, if I set a certain time of I don't hear from them, then it's like, okay, Mr. or Mrs. Attorney, let's send the demand letter. And then, go from there. And then you have to wait another 30 days. So it's kind of just processes and setting the clock.
So do you have any help at all in that space, Chris?
So yes. So I have a virtual assistant who does a lot of assistance with me where, for example, on due diligence, I'll take a bunch of the reports that I order, and then she'll put the information on a cover sheet for me with all the backup attached. So that saves probably each loan is probably saving me 30 minutes for the work that she does. Is I update my notes in the system. I can flag emails that automatically tag her, and she knows where to put them into my system. So it's a lot of the monotonous tasks or administrative tasks I can do. I do have a podcast and, do marketing as well. I have somebody specific for marketing on that aspect as well. So I focus more truly on managing the business and managing the assets, all the bidding. I do all the bidding, the due diligence, like I'll do the due diligence. But again, I have people put reports together, and then I also will check to make sure, because they include the title report and the backup. I've got the cover sheet, but I still go through everything as well. And, that's what I do late at night. I'm not a big TV person from that perspective. So if my wife goes to bed at, 9:30, 10 o'clock at night, I'll stay up till, 11:30 going through stuff, and it's nice and quiet. I don't have, the kids, running, asking for this or that or so forth as well. So it gives you time to actually spend it and focus.
Wow. Chris is rejuvenating me. Listening to the story. I think I'm missing out on a few hours. I could have burned some daylight looking at some other notes, not realize I could have had a system in place. Elizabeth?
Yeah. And, the thing too, again, with the virtual assistants, they're overseas. You pay them $4 to $5 an hour, which is, where they are, that's decent money. And, you get them trained, and you just got to, again, set the expectations of what you want them to do, and, start, giving them the tasks and increase the load as it goes on. And that's what I did. And, it's worked out great from that perspective.
I think, sorry, Elizabeth, I was going to jump in here. Chris, I think that's where a lot of entrepreneurs, they fail, or a lot of people starting up a business fail, is they're so afraid to give up that monotonous task, thinking that someone else couldn't do it as well as they can do it. Yep. And I was kind of one of those persons as well, until I started having virtual assistants help me with certain tasks. And I realized why was I so hung up on that? They actually do it faster and better than I can even do it. And then they come up with a more efficient way that I never thought of to do it because I was too worried about the 6 or 7 other things that I was wanting to get to. Right.
Well, and here's the reality of it too. Even if it took them 3 times longer to do it than it would take you, you look at the cost benefit. I mean, from that perspective, I was the same way. It took me forever. I didn't get a VA on board till some point, probably towards the end of, middle to end of last year. Because again, I was the same way. I'll just do it. It's easier for me to do it.
Right.
And then the other thing too is I outsource pretty much like everything. Collateral recording, storage of collateral, which I do store some collateral, but everything that can be outsourced, I'll outsource it. I don't like to do anything but manage and tell people this is what I want done. I have help with like my VA and Simplify to e-record documents. She'll upload everything in there and get it ready, hit submit, but I'll just go in and I just want to check it, make sure she didn't include like an allonge or something along those lines that shouldn't be in there. But for the most part, I get them everything set up to a certain point and, then kind of I'll finish the task or take it from there. But you're right. It's very challenging for entrepreneurs, one, to commit to spending the money, but then commit to giving up that task because most of us are control freaks, including myself.
Yeah.
So we have 2 VAs and they do all of our guest communication now. They have been fabulous, absolutely fabulous. I've been super impressed with them. So if anybody's kind of hung up on it, I would definitely encourage you to move forward.
Yeah. The one thing I'll just mention about VAs and kind of all over the place here is be careful what you do give them and make sure they understand, because I've seen also people on some communication note space, have their VAs reach out to people, larger funds and other people who sell notes. And I've gotten those emails from people and, it clearly wasn't checked for, the writing to make sure it was, clean and proper grammar, as well as sometimes I get phone calls and I'll get somebody and I'll ask them a few questions and they're like, well, let me get this person. It's like, right. If you're calling me, that to me, that's a turn off in the same sense. So you just want to make sure you understand when you're using them, use them to their best benefit. You don't want to put them in a position that they're going to fail in, or also make you, potentially your company, look a little bit unprofessional.
That's a great point. I've been getting some phone calls every now and then from people that may have been a connection on LinkedIn and noticed that, I'm in real estate or I buy notes, and they're like, hey, I have this bank portfolio. And I'm like, okay, great. And like you said, Chris, you ask them some questions and you realize they're not really speaking the same language as you, and just like, okay, I'm not going to spin my wheels to get to the principal seller when I might not even get to them. So,
or it's probably somebody that you already know.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's the one thing with the note space. It's such a small industry. When, I've got there's a tape that has, I think, bids due today on it, for example. It's a performing loan tape that a servicer put out. And I've got it from 4 different people. I got it straight from the servicer. Another servicer actually is selling it on behalf of another servicer. And then I had 2 other people who are, the quote brokers, send it out and like, oh, here's a tape. We're direct. And I'm like, no, you're not. Anytime someone says they're direct, they actually aren't.
Right. Exactly. You're right. Yeah.
So can you tell our audience, Chris, what are the notes that you focus on? Where is your specialty?
Yep. So I focus on first position mortgages. So I don't typically deal with seconds, which are, lines of credit. So first position, I'll buy performing and non-performing. So I'll buy loans where people aren't paying their mortgage. And people ask, why would you do that? And the reason, quick answer is because you get it at a substantial discount, no different than buying a property that is in distress. It needs work and so forth. You're not going to pay market value for it. You're going to get it at a discount. It's the same with a note from that perspective. Another aspect I've invested in is what's called land contracts or contract for deeds. Those are a little more challenging. I know, in the Midwest, they're big in that area. Yes. And, they're challenging. And the biggest challenge with them is, especially the ones that get originated by smaller sellers, they're typically, they didn't put the paperwork together properly, or, there's some title issues that they sometimes get passed on. So those, I would tell, newer investors, just, they're a little more challenging. I actually had an investor who's new to notes. She's bought, I don't know, maybe a half dozen notes and was asking about CFDs. And it literally, when she was asking about it, I was on the phone with her. I got an email from my servicer on a performing CFD that had, it was from the county because an inspector drove by and has all these violations. And I just sent her and I'm like, here's what can happen on a CFD. And she's like, oh, this non-performing, I'm assuming. I'm like, no, it's performing. And what happens in my mind is these inspectors look at the billing address and see that it's out of state. And I almost think they target out of state investors because I've had properties, Fort Wayne, Indiana, I think is a perfect example. I had a property next to these two other properties, and my property that we had taken back by no means was anything. It was awful. But the next two properties were just as bad, and they had abandoned cars and everything in the yards and stuff. I'm the one getting all these violations because the grass was too high and so forth. Or the light on the front wasn't working, and the others were, basically single family owners who, I looked them up. They've been in the house for, 40 something years. So I'm guessing they're probably elderly as well. But it's like, almost like I'm getting picked on. And literally it's like, the front, the glass on the light at the front is broken, $500, or you fix it within 2 weeks.
I think the LLC that's attached to the property is an endless supply of cash. Yep. And they figure they can just milk it for whatever they can. So here, Chris.
And what does CFD stand for?
Contract for deed. So the main difference with the contract for deed and a typical note is it's almost like a way a car loan works. The borrower has a loan, but like when you get a loan for a car, you're not entitled till you pay off the loan. A land contract or contract for deed is the same thing. Basically, the borrower has a loan, but their name's not on title in the county's office until they pay it off. So your LLC will be on title, and the county thinks that, oh, this is an out-of-state owner. Then they start sending you the forms of, oh, it's a rental property. You need to register as a rental. And then you try and fight that. And Detroit doesn't care. They just send you the fines even after they tell you they're not going to send you fines. So there's can be, like I said, a lot of head scratching dealing with these contract for deeds.
That was well said, Chris. Question to you is, off the topic of what we've been talking about, is do you have any books that you're currently reading or recommendations to our listeners?
So the one book, right now, so let me step back. So right now, it's not a book, but it's a program called Mind Valley. And Elizabeth, you look like you're aware of it. My wife got it for me actually for our anniversary last year because she started it. And it's 20-minute segments a day just on pretty much anything in life. It's parenting, marriage, business, meditation. It's run by this guy who's, I think, is from Philippines, who actually, I think he bet Harvard $1 million that he would take kids that don't go to college and kids that go to Harvard. And after like 4 years, or 6 years, they'll be more successful through his program than through a college because it's real life experience. And he's got some pretty big heavy hitters who teach these programs. And there's one, for example, on networking and raising money that was really extreme. It was awesome, actually. In the program, I want to say it's like $400 to $500 a year. So it's, $40 a month. But I found that to be, I love it. And the other thing too, is I'm not a big reader. I like to listen, but I have an attention span of, actually humans do have, I think, the shortest attention spans now of any creature. So but I pretty much, I set the bar at that because, I've got about a half a second attention span. So that's, I'll mention one thing though, I'll mention back for note investors is I also, while I was starting note investing, I was actually getting a master's degree in real estate finance. And it was a textbook that it's like 600 pages. It's really thick. And the author's name is Brueggemann, Brueggemann, I believe. And it's a book about real estate finance. But he's got like 3 chapters in there on notes and basically understanding notes, how to calculate like yields, understanding the yields, returns, kind of, and there's a lot of books out there now that kind of just share some stories and so forth, where this actually goes into the the schooling behind it, or kind of the real, rolling up the sleeves and understanding how to implement some of these processes into your business that I found when I was going through that is when I was taking my class as well. I'm like, wow, this is actually awesome. And I think, like anything now, they're probably on like the 16th edition, but I think like the 14th edition you can download for free. And I'm sure it's probably the same, except maybe they just change a year. So I just kind of want to mention that.
So that was called Mind Valley?
Mind Valley, yep.
Mind Valley.
The program.
Okay, we'll put that in the show notes for the episode. Chris, thanks for being on our podcast today. This is episode number 10 with the Two Wealth Show. Elizabeth, do you have any closing thoughts or any last minute rapid fire questions for Mr. Chris Seveney?
I would say, so you gave us a lot of good tidbits. What's your number one advice for productivity?
Again, scheduling and stay focused. For example, email is everyone's worst enemy. And you'll be in the middle of something, you'll see an email come up, and I still do this. And like right now I can see I got 11 emails in my inbox that's up on my screen. You got to close it out sometimes when you're trying to focus on something. And a lot of the things I read nowadays are you should check email like only several times a day and to be more productive. So I think that's really one of the major aspects. And then the other is kind of what we talked about, delegating tasks or responsibilities, if you have the ability to other people based on the value that they can provide to you versus what your value is.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
Chris, thank you again so much for being on our podcast today. Everybody, this was episode number 10. Don't forget to check out the video feed on the Bright Path Notes YouTube channel or Elizabeth MAORA's YouTube channel as well. I'm Justin Bogard with Bright Path Notes.
I'm Elizabeth with Elizabeth MAORA.
All right, Chris, do you have any information that you could pass along to our listening audience to get a hold of you?
Yeah, best way to get a hold of me is go to the website, seveneyinvestments.com. And you can learn more about Seveney Investments, also some of the investment options we have for accredited investors. We have several funds that we manage, as well as for people interested in getting into notes. We are getting ready to launch a new membership site that we're excited to do in the coming weeks. So it's information for people to learn more about the business. Awesome. Chris, we'll see you next time, my friend. Yep. Thank you for having me. All right, bye, everybody. Take care.
Bye.
The Two Wealth Show is produced by Justin Bogard and SUPERE, sponsored by Bright Path Notes and Elizabeth MAORA. Thanks for listening and watching for our show.